He stole his neighbor's goat, and he turned into a goat. This is a story about a young man Akeem who doesn't like to work but he loves eat by stealing in the village. Before we dive into this beautiful and inspiring story, please kindly like this story, share and subscribe to this channel for more amazing stories like this, and don't forget to tell us the country or cities you are watching from. In the small village of Olowu, there lived a young man called Akeem. Akeem was tall, strong, and full of energy, but he hated work. When other young men carried hoes and cutlasses to the farm in the morning, Akeem would cover himself with his wrapper and pretend to be sick. His mother would ask, "Akeem, why don't you go to the farm like others?" He would groan on the mat. "Mama, my body is hot, my head is turning me. Let me rest small." But as soon as the villagers left, Akeem would spring up like a hungry cat. He would wash his face, stretch his long arms, and smile to himself. The village became his playground. He moved quietly from house to house, listening for the sound of boiling soup. If he smelled fresh ugbono or egusi on the fire, his eyes would shine. He would tiptoe into the kitchen, lift the lid, and pick the fattest pieces of meat. After drinking the soup, he would fetch water from the clay pot outside and pour it into the pot to hide his theft. Sometimes he crept into kitchens where women had pounded yam or cooked rice. He would pack some into a leaf, wrap it tight, and hide it inside his shirt. Other times, he stole dry fish, Maggi cubes, pepper, and palm oil. Nothing escaped his greedy eyes. When evening came and the villagers returned from their farms, they would cry out about missing food. Mothers complained that their soup tasted like plain water. Children swore they saw a shadow near their doors, but no one could prove anything. Akeem would sit under the big mango tree at the center of the village, chewing roasted corn and smiling like a king. "I am not done with you people yet," he would whisper to himself, brushing crumbs from his lips. His mother began to worry. "Akeem, your mates are farming and building huts. What will you eat when the dry season comes?" But Akeem only laughed. "Mama, the world is full of food. I will not starve." Days passed and Akeem grew bolder. He started sneaking into houses even when the owners were still around. If a woman went to fetch water, he would slip inside like wind, grab a handful of gari or a calabash of palm wine, and vanish. The villagers started to suspect him. Old men whispered in corners. Young men planned to catch the thief, but Akeem was clever. He knew every narrow path, every hidden corner, and every shortcut in Olowu. At night, he would lie on his mat and laugh quietly. "They can never catch me," he said, staring at the thatched roof. But deep inside, a small fear began to grow. Sometimes he heard footsteps behind him when no one was there. Sometimes dogs barked and refused to stop, their eyes glowing in the dark. Still, Akeem ignored the warnings. His hunger for free food was stronger than his fear. The more the villagers complained, the more he enjoyed his secret life. Akeem's wickedness grew like a wild weed. In the daytime, he pretended to be weak, lying on the mat and holding his stomach as if pain lived inside him. But when darkness covered the village, he turned into a shadow. His steps were soft like a cat, his eyes sharp like a hunting owl. He began to steal more than soup and dry fish. He crept into backyards and untied goats. He grabbed fat chickens and tucked them under his arm. When the cock crowed in the morning, someone's hen was gone, and only scattered feathers remained. Soon the whole village became restless. They started whispering in the moonlight. "Who is stealing our food? Who is taking our chickens?" Voices rose in the evening gatherings. Women pressed their wrappers tight, shaking their heads in anger. Men sharpened their cutlasses, promising to catch the thief. Children were warned not to play far from home. They suspected Akeem, but he was too clever. He wore innocence like a white cloth. Sometimes he carried a cutlass on his shoulder, pretending to go to the farm. But instead of farming, he slipped into people's yam ridges. He dug out big yams, roasted them in the bush until smoke curled through the trees, ate until his stomach was round, and then stretched under the big tree for a lazy sleep. When the sun began to fall, he brushed the ashes from his hands and walked back to the village. His clothes smelled of earth, and he dragged his feet like a man who had worked hard. "This boy cannot be the thief," some villagers said when they saw him. "He is too innocent looking," others added, shaking their heads. Akeem even learned to cry when fingers pointed at him. If someone accused him, he would fall on the ground and roll in the dust. Tears would run down his cheeks as he swore by the names of his late father and mother. "May my parents rise from their graves and punish me if I stole a single grain of rice," he would shout, beating his chest. His voice was so full of pain that even the elders believed him. Women gathered around to lift him, wiping his face with their wrappers. "Ah, poor boy," they said. "Maybe we judged him too quickly." But in his heart, Akeem laughed. He felt proud that he could fool the whole village. He told himself that no one could ever catch him. Night after night, his greed grew. He began to climb trees to pluck ripe pawpaw and mangoes from other people's farms. He sneaked into palm wine taps, drinking until his lips turned white with foam. Sometimes he left footprints on the soft earth, but he made sure to brush them away with a branch before the sun came up. Dogs barked in the dark, sensing his presence, but he knew how to silence them. He carried small pieces of roasted meat in a leaf and threw them to the animals. While they chewed happily, he vanished into the shadows. The villagers became desperate. They started keeping watch at night, hiding behind trees with lanterns and sticks. But Akeem moved like smoke. When he saw a flicker of light, he melted into the bush and waited until the night grew quiet again. Still, some elders began to whisper to one another. "A person cannot hide forever. The earth has eyes. The day of shame will come." But Akeem only smiled in the darkness, thinking of the next house he would visit and the next meal he would steal. One day, Akeem's neighbor, Mama Ronk, lost her only goat. The goat was more than just an animal. It was her hope for paying her daughter's school fees. Without it, she could not sell meat or get the money she needed. From morning till evening she searched. She called the goat's name, shaking a calabash of feed. She checked behind the kitchen, the bush path, even the riverbank. Nothing. Only silence and dry footprints. Her heart burned with anger and fear. She stormed straight to Akeem's compound, her wrapper tied tightly around her waist, her eyes red like fire. "Akeem!" she shouted, her voice ringing through the village. "Where is my goat?" Akeem stepped out slowly, pretending to be surprised. He raised his hands to the sky as if calling heaven to witness. "Mama Ronk," he said, his face smooth like water. "I swear with my father's grave, I did not see your goat. Maybe it wandered into the bush. Go and check again." But Mama Ronk was not a fool. Her eyes narrowed as she studied him. She knew Akeem's tricks, the way he smiled when trouble came. "You think I don't know you," she hissed. "This is not just an ordinary goat. This goat is my child's school fees. If you have hidden it, the gods will fight for me." Tears ran down her cheeks as she turned away. She did not bother to argue. Instead, she marched straight to the village shrine, her bare feet raising dust along the narrow path. When she reached the shrine, the air felt heavy. The giant Irako tree stood like a silent guard. The priest looked up as she entered, his face painted with white chalk. Mama Ronk knelt on the earth, her voice shaking with anger and pain. "Gods of our land," she cried, "you who see the secrets of the night, you who hear even the whispers of rats, hear me today. Whoever stole my goat, let shame and punishment follow him. Let the truth show itself. Let his own shadow expose him. Let the thief have no rest until the goat is found." Her words echoed through the trees. Birds took off into the sky. Even the wind seemed to stop. The villagers, who had followed quietly, began to tremble. No one joked with the shrine's curse. Everyone knew the gods of Olowu never slept. A curse from the shrine was like fire. It always found the thief, no matter how far he ran. Old men nodded slowly. Women murmured prayers. Children held their mothers' wrappers tightly. Back in his hut, Akeem felt a sudden chill. He laughed to himself, but the laughter was dry. His heart beat faster than usual. He remembered the fat goat he had roasted in the bush the night before, the sweet smell of its meat still clinging to his hands even after washing. He told himself, "Nothing will happen. I am too smart," but deep inside, a strange fear began to grow, as if unseen eyes were watching him from every corner of the room. That night, Akeem slept like a king. His belly was full of roasted yam and the fat chicken he had stolen from another backyard. The sweet taste of the meat still lingered on his tongue as he stretched on his mat, snoring loudly. But when the first light of morning touched the village, something strange happened. Akeem stirred and rubbed his eyes, feeling a sharp pain in his head. "My head is heavy," he muttered, thinking it was only sleep. He sat up, but the pain grew stronger, like something was forcing its way out from inside his skull. He touched his head and froze. Under his fingers, he felt two small hard lumps, rough, like stones. "Aha, what is this?" he whispered, fear crawling into his chest. The lumps began to swell. Slowly, they pushed through his skin. He felt the warm wetness of blood trickling down his forehead. He gasped and ran to the small cracked mirror that hung on the wall. The moment he looked, a loud scream burst from his mouth. "What is this?" His reflection stared back like a nightmare. Two sharp horns curved out of his skull, dark and shining. His eyes, once brown, had turned deep red like burning coal. His ears stretched long and pointed, twitching like a goat's. His jaw jutted forward, and when he opened his mouth, a hoarse bleating sound escaped instead of words. "No, no, no," he cried, but the voice that came out was half human, half goat. Panicked, he stumbled backward, knocking down the wooden stool. His heart pounded like a drum. He clawed at the horns, but they only grew harder. His hands trembled. Sweat poured down his body. He rushed out of the hut, forgetting to cover himself. Morning sun spilled across the compound as he ran into the open. The first person to see him was a little boy fetching water. The child's eyes widened like full moons. "Yezu! What is that?" the boy screamed, dropping his calabash. Within seconds, the village square filled with cries. Women coming from the stream froze in their tracks. Their buckets rolled to the ground. "Yezu! Blood of Jesus!" one shouted. "Is it human or animal?" another asked, holding her chest. Children began to cry and cling to their mothers. Some ran into the bush. Women fled into their huts, slamming doors behind them. The men came out with sticks and cutlasses, their faces pale but determined. They formed a circle around Akeem, fear mixing with anger. "What kind of spirit is this?" an elder said, his voice shaking. "Is it a demon? A masquerade?" another whispered. Akeem tried to speak, to tell them it was him, but only a strange bleating came out. "Me, me." The sound chilled the villagers to the bone. They tightened their grip on their weapons, ready for anything. The air in Olowu grew heavy, as if the gods themselves were watching. A slow wind moved through the trees, carrying the smell of roasted meat and something darker like punishment waiting to fall. Surrounded by villagers, Akeem fell to the dusty ground, his knees scraping the earth. Tears poured down his red eyes like rain. His voice cracked as he struggled to speak, his words mixed with the rough bleating of a goat. "Please, forgive me," he cried, his hoarse voice echoing through the square. "I am the one. I am the one who has been stealing your soup. I ate your meat, I stole your yam, I roasted your crops in the bush. I am the one who took the chickens, and Mama Ronk's goat too." The crowd gasped as if lightning had struck. Women covered their mouths with trembling hands. Children hid behind their mothers' wrappers, peeking with wide eyes. The elders stepped forward slowly, their faces dark with sorrow and anger. "So it is true," one old man said, leaning on his staff. "Akeem, you have brought shame upon us," another added, his voice heavy like a funeral drum. A hush fell over the village. Even the birds in the irako tree went silent. Only the wind moved, carrying the smell of sweat and fear. Akeem kept crying, his body shaking. "Please. I am sorry. I will never steal again. Have mercy on me." But no one came close. The smell of goat surrounded him, thick and strange. His horns grew longer, twisting toward the sky. His ears stretched farther, flicking like the ears of a restless animal. Patches of coarse hair began to spread across his shoulders and arms. Some villagers stepped back, fear in their eyes. "This is the work of the gods," a woman whispered. "The shrine has answered Mama Ronk's cry," another said, shivering. Mama Ronk pushed through the crowd, her face pale. She stared at Akeem, tears shining in her eyes. "So it was you," she said softly. "You ate the goat meant for my daughter's school fees. And now the gods have taken their share." Akeem reached out his trembling hands toward her, but she moved back quickly, clutching her wrapper tighter. The chief elder raised his staff and spoke with a deep, commanding voice. The earth does not swallow the truth forever. The gods have judged you, Akeem. Your own greed has brought this curse. The people murmured in agreement. Some made the sign of the cross, others muttered prayers to the old gods. Children began to cry again, their small voices mixing with the low moan of the wind. Akeem tried to crawl closer to the elders, but his legs felt strange. His knees bent the wrong way, his feet cloven like a goat's. He looked down and screamed as he saw his toenails harden into black hooves. "No! Help me!" he shouted, but the sound came out as a loud bleat. "Me! Me!" That echoed through the village like thunder. The elders stepped back, fear and pity on their faces. "Keep your distance," the oldest one warned. "This is not a man's battle. This is between him and the gods." Akeem buried his face in the dust, his tears mixing with the dry earth. But the horns kept growing, curling like a ram's. The smell of goat grew stronger, filling the air until even the strongest men covered their noses. Above them, the sky darkened slightly though the sun was still high. A cold breeze swept across the village, rattling the palm fronds. Some said they heard faint drums in the distance, the sound of spirits moving. The people watched in silence, their hearts heavy, waiting to see what the gods would do next. The villagers tied Akeem's hands with a strong rope made from twisted palm leaves. 2 men held him by the arms while others followed behind, chanting softly so their courage would not fail. His horns glistened in the hot sun, and every step he took left the smell of goat in the air. They carried him to the great palace at the heart of Olowu. Drummers beat slow, heavy rhythms as they approached, warning everyone that judgment was about to happen. Women and children came out of their huts, keeping their distance but following the sound of the drums. Inside the palace, the Oba of Olowu sat tall on his carved wooden throne. His coral beads shone bright around his neck, and his eyes were as sharp as a hawk's. The chiefs stood beside him, their faces stern. The air was thick with the smell of incense and palm oil lamps. When the villagers pushed Akeem forward, a gasp moved through the hall. The Oba stared at the creature before him, half man, half goat, trembling with fear. "Akeem," the Oba said at last, his deep voice rolling like thunder. "We gave you food when you were hungry. We gave you shelter when you were homeless. But you chose to walk the path of wickedness. You lied. You stole. You shamed this land. Now the gods have revealed you. What do you have to say for yourself?" Akeem fell to his knees, the rope biting into his wrists. Tears soaked the polished floor. His horns brushed the ground as he bent low. "Kabiyesi," he cried, his voice cracking like dry wood. "I was foolish. I thought I was smart. I thought no one could catch me. Please, have mercy on me. Forgive me, great father of Olowu. I will never steal again." The Oba's eyes did not soften. He lifted his staff, the golden head shining in the light. "The gods have spoken," he said slowly. "This is not the judgment of man but of the spirits who guard this land. You are cursed, Akeem. Your own greed has brought this punishment. From today, you are banished from Olowu. If you remain, disaster will fall upon us all." A deep silence filled the palace. Then the chief drummer struck the great gong 3 times. The sound echoed like thunder across the village. The people outside raised their voices, their cry rising like a storm. "Akeem must go! Akeem must go!" they shouted again and again, stamping their feet on the ground. Dust filled the air. Mothers held their children close. Old men shook their heads, their beads rattling. Some women began to sing a sorrowful song, a tune of warning and farewell. Akeem tried to speak once more, but the sound came out as a sharp bleat. The villagers stepped back, some covering their ears. The Oba turned to his chiefs. "Prepare the road," he commanded. "He must be taken beyond the 7 hills before the sun sets. Let no shadow of his cross our land again." The guards tightened the rope around Akeem's arms. 2 strong men moved to each side of him, their faces hard as stone. The people answered in one voice, "So it shall be." The drums thundered again, and the palace gates swung wide as the crowd surged forward, ready to drive the cursed man from the land. That evening, as the sun slipped behind the tall iroko trees, the villagers gathered in the wide square. A cold wind moved through the air, carrying the smell of dust and smoke. Drums began to beat, slow, heavy strokes that sounded more like a warning than music. It was not a dance of joy but a drum of shame. Men held long sticks. Children clutched their mothers' wrappers, their eyes wide and curious. The elders stood in front, their faces hard like carved wood. They pushed Akeem forward, his rope dragging in the dirt. His horns glistened in the pale moonlight, long and curved like a ram's. His once proud shoulders sagged. "Goat head! Goat head!" the children shouted, their voices sharp and cruel. Some threw dry leaves at him. Others clapped their hands and laughed, though fear still lived in their eyes. Women spat on the ground as he passed. "Shame on you," one hissed. "You brought curse to our land," another muttered. The men poked him with their sticks, forcing him toward the path that led out of Olowu. Stones clattered against the earth near his feet. Akeem stumbled but kept moving. Tears ran down his face, mixing with the dust of the road. The moonlight caught the wetness on his cheeks and made his horns shine like silver. He turned his head once to look back. The village that had raised him, the huts where he had laughed as a boy, now glowed faintly under the moon. No one waved. No one called his name. His chest ached. He remembered the nights of stolen soup, the pots he had emptied and refilled with water. He remembered the chickens he had roasted in secret and the palm wine he had sipped while others searched for the thief. He remembered Mama Ronk's tears the day her goat disappeared, and the curse she called down at the shrine. "Why didn't I listen? Why did I choose laziness?" he muttered, his voice breaking into a hoarse bleat. "Why did I think I was wiser than the elders?" The forest waited ahead, dark, thick, and full of night sounds. Crickets sung. Owls hooted from hidden branches. The path seemed endless, covered in shadows. Akeem's legs trembled, but he kept walking, each step heavy with regret. Behind him, the drums of the village grew softer and softer until they were only a distant echo. The smell of damp earth rose around him. Leaves rustled as small animals moved in the undergrowth. The moon slid behind a cloud, and the world turned darker. He wiped his eyes, but the tears kept coming. Hunger already gnawed at his belly. The roasted meat of past nights came back to his mind, but there was no food now, no warm fire, no friendly face. Alone in the deep forest, Akeem felt the weight of his choices pressing down like a mountain. Yet he could not stop. The words of the Oba rang in his head, "Until you cleanse your heart and the gods show mercy, no home will open for you, no field will give you food, no river will quench your thirst." A cold breeze swept through the trees, and somewhere far away a hyena laughed. Akeem shivered, clutching his arms around his chest as he disappeared deeper into the night. Akeem wandered the forest for many days and nights. He had no house, no mat to sleep on, no fire to keep him warm. The trees became his roof, the dry ground his bed. When rain fell, he shivered under thick leaves. When the sun burned, he hid inside caves like a wild animal. He drank from muddy streams and chewed bitter roots. Sometimes he found small fruits, but many were sour and made his stomach ache. Each time he bent to drink water, he saw his reflection. His own face frightened him. The long horns curved over his head, sharp and black. His eyes looked half human, half goat. He would cover his face with his hands and weep until his chest hurt. "This is my punishment," he whispered again and again. "My greed has destroyed me. My lies have followed me like shadows." At night, strange sounds filled the forest, owls crying, snakes sliding through dry leaves. The wind howled like spirits. Sometimes he thought he heard drums far away, as if the gods were still watching. One evening, hungry and weak, Akeem climbed a small hill. From there he could see the faint lights of Olowu village far away. He remembered the laughter of children, the smell of Mama Ronk's soup, the market full of yams and roasted corn. He fell to his knees, groaning like a wounded animal. "Will I ever find mercy?" he asked the silent sky. But only the croak of frogs answered him. Yet hunters, passing through the deep forest, sometimes returned with strange stories. They spoke of a cry that sounded like a man and a goat together. A long, sad wail that made the night birds fall silent. Parents gathered their children around the evening fire and warned them. "Do not be lazy like Akeem. Do not steal, even the smallest thing. Because one day, the gods will see you." And when the wind rushed through the trees, the children pressed close to their mothers, wondering if Akeem still wandered out there. Half man, half goat. crying for a second chance that would never come. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories. Like, share and drop your comment below.